It was funny, you know, he just sold a startup, so we all kind of presumed he was the richest person around, but he said, oh no, I'll take this tiny little shoebox-sized room. That's all I need. Like, it was barely larger than a closet. The idea of him spending his money on fancy objects just seems so implausible.
He explains it's like, I like living in apartments, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of money on a new place to live. I'm not gonna buy a mansion. And I like wearing jeans and a t-shirt, so I'm not gonna spend any more money on clothes. So like, it's, you know, really no big deal.
What is a big deal to Swartz is how traffic flows on the internet and what commands our attention.
In the old system of broadcasting, you were fundamentally limited by the amount of space in the airwaves. You know, you could only send out 10 channels over the airwaves of television, right? Or even with cable, you had 500 channels. On the internet, everybody can have a channel. Everyone can get a blog or a MySpace page. Everyone has a way of expressing themselves. And so what you see now is not a question of who gets access to the airwaves. It's a question of who gets control over the ways you find people. You know, you start seeing power centralizing in sites like Google, these sort of gatekeepers that tell you where on the internet you want to go, the people who provide you your sources of news and information. So it's not, you know, only certain people have a license to speak. Now everyone has a license to speak. It's a question of who gets heard.
After he started working in San Francisco at Condé Nast, he comes into the office and they want to give him a computer with all this crap installed on it and say that he can't install any new things on his computer, which to a developer is outrageous, right? From the first day, he was complaining about all this stuff. Gray walls, gray desks, gray noise. The first day I showed up here, I simply couldn't take it. By lunchtime, I had literally locked myself in a bathroom stall and started crying. I can't imagine staying sane with someone buzzing in my ear all day, let alone getting any actual work done. Nobody else seems to get work done here either. Everybody's always coming into our room to hang out and chat or invite us to play the new video game system that Wired is testing.
He really had different aspirations that were politically oriented. And Silicon Valley just doesn't really quite have that culture that orients technical activity for the purposes of political goals.
Aaron hated working for a corporation. They all hate working for Condé Nast, but Aaron is like the only one who's not going to take it. And Aaron basically gets himself fired by not showing up to work ever.
It was said to be a messy breakup. Both Alexis Ohanian and Steve Huffman declined to be interviewed for this film.
He rejected the business world. One of the really important things to remember about that choice when Aaron decided to kind of leave startup culture is that he was also leaving behind the things that had made him, you know, famous and well-loved, and, you know, he was at risk of letting down fans.
He got to where he was supposed to be going and had the self-awareness and the orneriness to realize that he had climbed the mountain of shit to pluck the single rose and discovered that he'd lost his sense of smell. And rather than sit there and insist that it wasn't as bad as it seemed, and he did get the rose in any event, he climbed back down again, which is pretty cool.
The way Aaron always saw it is that programming is magic, right? You can accomplish these things that normal humans can't by being able to program. So if you had magical powers, would you use them for good or to make you mountains of cash?
Swartz was inspired by one of the visionaries he had met as a child, the man who had invented the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. In the 1990s, Berners-Lee was arguably sitting on one of the most lucrative inventions of the 20th century. But instead of profiting from the invention of the World Wide Web, he gave it away for free. It is the only reason the World Wide Web exists today.
Aaron is certainly deeply influenced by Tim. Tim is certainly a very prominent early internet genius who doesn't in any sense cash out. He's not at all interested in how he's going to figure out how to make $1 billion.
People would have seen, there's money to be made there, so there would have been lots of little webs instead of one big one. And one little web, and lots of little webs doesn't work because you can't follow links from one to the other. You know, you had to have the critical mass for this thing was the entire planet. So it's not going to work unless the whole planet can get on board.
I mean, feel very strongly that it's not enough to just live in the world as it is, to just kind of take what you're given and, follow the things that adults told you to do and that, your parents told you to do and that society tells you to do. I think you should always be questioning. I take this very scientific attitude that everything you've learned is just provisional, that, it's always open to recantation or refutation or questioning. And I think the same applies to society. Once I realized that there were real serious problems, fundamental problems that I could do something to address, I didn't see a way to forget that.